Good evening, everyone. This is the latest episode of Pretty Damn Interesting. Today is kind of a smorgasbord of topics. And maybe I just use smorgasbord because I'm ready for Thanksgiving and I'm ready to eat. But um, I'm Kenny.
I'm Lisa. I was stuck on the smorgasbord piece. Sorry.
It was kind of paralyzing. Um, I kind of caught the itis for a second. I'm John. Hey, we thought we hit on like a few different topics because really been speaking to us as of late. Um, I think we'll each kind of hit on a little bit about this safety pin movement, about uh, this Trump post election stuff, a little bit about Thanksgiving, um, and I guess I kind of just kind of start off with just expressing my frustrations with the safety pin piece specifically. Man, it's just really interesting. It's just a really interesting thing. I put a post up, and I was joking and like serious at the same time, right? So if I see you on the street and you got a safety pin on, I'm going to challenge you and see, hey, tell me something that shows me that you are a safe space, that you represent safety for me. And if your response is inadequate, I'm gonna snatch your pen off like we Greek, right? And I got, a lot of interesting comments. Most people were like, that's funny. You a fool. And I got one comment from this person who was white and a woman, and she was, just kind of saying how you shouldn't belittle or you shouldn't. I don't remember the words exactly, but she was like, it's sad when you were trying to be helpful. And it really kind of irritated me. Like I was really bothered by the whole comment. And so I responded, and some of the points that I made were like, man, who came up with this, right? It seems very white centered. If this is all you're doing, this isn't enough. It is really essentially more of the same, and a way to do something, a way to feel like you're doing something without actually doing something. And so she responded, and her first response was like, I totally agree. I will never understand what it's like to be black. And I was like, who are you talking to? I didn't say that was not even a part of what I was saying. And it seemed like an arrogant response in that you assumed what I was thinking or feeling, or you kind of really working towards creating a response to win an argument as opposed to really like dissecting what it was that I was saying, which is essentially that you got to do your own self work if you really want to help like correct the situation. So like that was the start of it, and she started going into how if I really want to help white people, these are some suggestions. And in that moment, I just was like, I was turned off by the whole discussion, um, because I was frustrated and I just didn't have the energy to go back into it, and kind of like explain or what it means to like be in this space where you know essentially white people made a decision that negatively impacted all of us to be here again, right? This is not brand new, and I'm thinking in 2016 with a white woman running for president who is extremely qualified and this person who is extremely unqualified, like how do we end up in this position? And so for a white person to like come at me on ways to like help white folks, I'm like, well, I'm not really ready for this conversation right now. I'm just irritated. So and then another person of color was like, I believe she identified as a Muslim. She kind of put up on her post like, well, I like the safety pins, da 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 da. They help, let people know that I'm safe. And I'm like, well, if you're walking around with a hijab, or you look the skin tone that you look, I think you may represent safety, you may not. Like every person of color isn't necessarily a safe space. I get that, but I still see it as very white centered. And I thought it was interesting to see it play out over and over again, where like white people were centering the conversation around themselves, their experiences, their feelings, and so that really just frustrated me. And I feel better talking about it. The more I talk about it, the better. But like this isn't anything new. But I feel like there are a lot of white people who are reaching new levels of awareness and almost staying in exactly the same place. It's like their eyes are. It's like, I don't know, like they just woke up, but their eyes are still closed. You know what I mean? Like they're awake, but their eyes aren't open quite yet. So they sense that there's something going on, but they don't necessarily know what. And they're trying to do something, but it's still like we're in the same place. You haven't really done anything at all. So that's kind of like that's where I am right now in response to the safety pin movement and the election of Trump. And the last thing I want to say is like a couple of the people who Donald Trump is, trying to recommend for his cabinet are literally a part of the alt-right movement, literally a part of white supremacist movements. And we're all just cool with it. Or, a lot of people, a lot of white folks are really, really cool with it. And I remember President Obama came through, attended Jeremiah Wright's church, Pastor Jeremiah Wright's church. And that's all we saw for like a strong month is clips of Jeremiah Wright preaching about America's chickens coming home to roost, which out of all the stuff that white people in America and in Europe have done over all of these centuries makes total sense. And yet everyone's really cool about, these new nominees, Stephen Bannon and some of these other guys. Stephen Bannon runs Breitbart News, which is extremely right, all right, white supremacist. And I just think it's really interesting because we're here for the feelings and thoughts of, and by we I mean the majority of Americans. We're here for the thoughts and feelings of like white folks, but not for those of color or for any other non-dominant group. So
I saw that thread, your thread, and I first want to say, like, even though you say you ain't have time for it, you had a lot of time for her, actually. You had all the time in the world, actually. So yeah. But
after the response.
Okay. But first, like, with the safety pins, like, I didn't know what it was. And we talked about this right before we came on air. Like, Black people ain't know. Like, the marginalized people did not know that this was a thing. And so I put on my Facebook, I was like, what is this safety pin movement? Because I saw somebody talking about safety pins, and I'm like, I know we're not just talking about random safety pins. Like, what is going on, right? Why are they trending? And so people were like, oh, it's a way for people to mark that, you can be safe around them. And I was like, oh, who? Like, and my response was, are white people wearing these? Like, and people were like, well, yeah. Then it's interesting because a woman of color and also a white woman expressed views about not bashing the movement or whatever because it was supposed to be helping. And I was like, there are going to be some people who are going to wear that safety pin and who are going to actually work. However, I feel that majority, and this and it played out perfectly because the white woman who commented on my status used the term or the phrase, there are good people. And when I saw that, I stopped. And I didn't read anything else she said because I was like, oh, so the safety pin is a way for you to distinguish that I'm not like them. And I'm like, well, who is it really for? Like, are you really wearing it for the marginalized people? Like, and ultimately, just because you have on a safety pin does not mean I'm going to feel safe, does not mean like I feel like I can go talk to you and you're going to make everything better. Like that doesn't help, right? One of my friends commented on the status and was like, I mean, police officers wear badges and pins, it's all the same stuff, but they're supposed to protect and serve. That's what their badge means or their pin, but we see how that turns out. And I was like, you're absolutely right, because we know is 70+% of white men voted for Donald Trump, 50+% of white women voted for Donald Trump. And that's not to say that they themselves are overtly racist or bigoted or whatever, but your vote says that you agree with the rhetoric and things that he says. So you cannot be trusted by me. I'm only going to speak for me. I can't trust you. But ultimately, y'all are the people that are wearing the pins too. So am I supposed to be safe when you voted for someone who has stirred up all of the covert racism and bigotry and hatred and phobias in America? Like, people are using this election, literally using the words, I'm making America great again. Trump is my president now, like, to leave racist hate mail on people's doors and, you know, calling people out of their names and all of that type of stuff. There was a video of a white guy in Starbucks who was like going, you know, he was kind of like dogging out this black girl, and this other white man kind of jumped in and was like, you don't talk to people like that or whatever. Those are the people that I actually can get behind, because they're the ones who are calling out their racist, bigoted family members on Facebook. They are the ones that are standing up for people in public arenas. Like, those are the people that I can get behind. If you're wearing this safety pin just to say you're wearing the safety pin, like, all you're ending up with is a hole in your shirt. Like, I don't care. Like, that does not do anything for me. And for the people of color that are wearing safety pins, so apparently some people of color are wearing safety pins for other marginalized groups of people to say they're an ally. I mean, ultimately, like, I get it, but like, what's the point? Just be that. My thing is, you don't have to wear a safety pin. I'll know that you are somebody who is an ally if you act like an ally, period. Just be an ally. You don't have to wear a safety pin or wear a shirt or do anything else. Just be an ally. Like, if you're not out here talking about Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter, like, if you disabled lives matter, if you're not talking about all of that in a public sphere where everybody can see what you're talking about, you are not an ally, period. The safety pin that doesn't give you some, like, you're not like grand ally now because you have a safety pin. And on the flip side, the safety pins are not being commercialized. Like, Nordstrom's got Gucci safety pins and stuff. What? Like, now it's a fashion statement. Safety pins are now back, like, by popular demand. Get your Gucci safety pin.
Safety pins are the new black.
$400. Like, what? Like, it's already turned into something that absolutely has nothing to do with the people that you said it was about. Now it's about, I'm rich, so of course I have to have the safety pin from Nordstrom because, duh, like, I'm rich. That is not what it's about. It's not about the people that you claim to be an ally. And ultimately, like she said, that whole there are good people. Like, I think it's just a way for people to say, I'm not like the rest of them. I'm a good person. But you out here and you vote for people that don't see it for me, that hate me, that ostracize me, that don't pay me the same amount of money, that don't look at my application because my name is ghetto, no, I'm not here for it. I'm sorry. Like, and if I see a safety pin, I'm charging you up. What you know for that safety pin? Let me know. Who are you an ally for? You ally for me? Tell me how you're an ally for me. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be 90% of people are not going to be able to give me what I need. So, nah, not seeing it.
So, one of the first things I'll say is that I literally didn't go to sleep election night, and I was on a plane to Montreal the next day. That was already pre-planned. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm leaving right now. Kenny, I see your face. But it was good to kind of like be out of the country and really just kind of step back and reflect and see what another country thinks, and kind of just be in like a actual safe space. Not because it was another country, but because of the organization that I went with. So, and the second thing that I'll say is that my president ran in 1972. Shirley Chisholm ran for president in 1972 from Brooklyn. So, I mean, I'm just not here for all of this, president, whatever. And another thing, too, that I noticed is that people started calling Donald Trump President Trump. And those are the same people that call Obama Mr. Obama. So I just noticed like a little, just disrespect and in subtle ways. And those are the types of situations that we need to kind of focus on, especially with the safety pin stuff. Like I came back into the country, went to my office and saw that my office mates had put the safety pin on our door. Now I have 3 other office mates. So I was like, okay, I'm outnumbered. Let me do my work. I got grants due. I got stuff to do. I don't even want to ask y'all what this is right now. But then I had 2 Black women students who came up to me and they're like, what is this? Like, why is this on your door? And so they like hem me up and I'm like, I'm outnumbered. I don't even know what this is. Like, I just keep hearing about being in solidarity and people are wearing safety pins and hanging pictures on their doors to say that they're in solidarity. My thing is that if you're in solidarity, for example, if you're a department that said, all of our people who are faculty, staff, and grad students, we want y'all to hang this up so that students feel comfortable talking to you. That's great. That's lovely. But how about some concrete action? So for example, like I'm in the sociology department. So what about making a curriculum that includes Du Bois that's not at the last 3 weeks of class, for example? Or you could bring in other Black sociologists like Cox, right? Like you can bring in people who actually show that they were doing sociology before it was even named. So why don't we talk about implementing hardcore, concrete things that are tangible that we can see, not just, oh, I feel bad, I want to cry, and be a guilty white person or whatever. And I'm just not here for it. If you want to change your policies, you want to let more Black students into your program, you want to let more Native American students into your program, like that's what I want to talk about. I don't want to see no safety pins. I don't want to talk about no safety pins. I'm over it because students of color are not here for it. And they're like looking at me like, you with them now? No, I'm not. So
that's the thing.
Huh?
Like, that's the thing. Like, I feel like you hit the nail on the head when you start talking about curriculum. I sat in a critical theory course. It was over the summer. It was 6 weeks. Week 6 was everybody that's possibly got a little bit more melanin in them.
Right.
Like
everybody and see that's
how you gonna cover Skip Gates in a class period? What? Like
I am done.
You know what I'm saying? But like just having different scholars come and all that time. Like, I mean, we had Ed Baptist come, he's a scholar at Cornell. He had just came out with his book, The Half Has Never Been Told, and it was about slavery and capitalism and all that type of stuff in America. And I'm like, that's cool, but
people did this already.
Like, why can't can we get can we get Mark Lamont Hill here? Which, by the way, he's coming to Florida State, but that's for the MLK week, so that don't But
right.
Like, can we?
That's the only. Well, see, that's part of the marginalization I'm talking about. If we are just having Black scholars come in during these tokenized times, then that's part of the problem, right? Like, we don't need to have. We need scholars in November to come to our campuses and to drop this knowledge, talk about their books, talk about their work, talk about how we need to be doing this work together. we don't need like these. Everybody has stuff in February. Everybody got stuff MLK week. Like,
And
for
that's
what? Like, we need stuff all year, especially at these predominantly white institutions. So, I mean, that's a whole other thing. Like, I'm over the safety pins. And then just tying it back to the fact that, you know, it's the week of Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving, whatever you want to call it. So, a holiday that's like, it's
Taking no thanks.
right. Like, you're basically saying, like, okay, we came here, we colonized, which is what happened, right? We didn't find nothing. People were already living here. So we decided that we will, you know, this will be our new home now. They didn't know how to eat. They didn't know how to farm. They didn't know how to do anything with this land. And all of a sudden, there's a holiday memorializing the genocide of the people who taught you how to grow food and do all this stuff. And then so you're the genocide of Native Americans and then the enslavement of Africans. Like, that's really the root of this particular holiday. And I think we need to recognize the colonization. I'm not saying don't eat good food on Thursday. That's not what I'm saying. Like,
because I'm gonna eat.
right. I mean, you eat as a reform of resistance. You do what you need to do, I guess. I mean, you know, you do what you need to do, but it's just like some people fast. Some people have like talk about, I don't know, lessons around genocide and enslavement, right? Like, so we really, I think as Black people specifically can reclaim it and just recognize that we can't just assimilate into the holiday. Yes, we can enjoy our family and friends, but we need to recognize history that oppresses us and not act like, you know, we've always been in mind when the Constitution was written or whatever, or whenever Thanksgiving started, you know? So I'm just like, yeah, it's been an interesting few weeks, y'all.
Nah, I totally agree with all that. I think that there was a comment that you made, Kenny, that I don't fully agree with in terms of the allyship. I do think it's a different level of risk that people are willing to take when they advocate in public. And I think that there are all kind of factors that make that decision more difficult. And I think that is privilege. That speaks to privilege because I don't have that decision. Like, that's not a choice for me, right? I can't like pretend that I'm not Black today. Like people can pretend like, hey, I don't, you know, choose to be an ally, or I don't choose to like speak up in public today. So I think that that I encourage my friends who are in any privileged group, especially white, because we are heavily organized around race in this country and around skin color and tone in this world. Encourage them like to speak out, because I do critically question, like, what are you doing if you can't say what you can say to me behind closed doors in front of other people? You know, it's like a secret relationship. Like when you first start talking and you don't know whether or not that person is worthy of like spending time with in public, right? Like, is my relationship with you to the point where you're willing to like say all the stuff that you would say in private in public, and understand that when you don't speak out, that questions like of President-elect Trump, right? So I mean, I think that, man, Lisa, like, for real, that Thanksgiving joint is real. And I think like, yeah, the critical examination is just really important. Like, yeah, why am I doing this? What am I doing? Like, by celebrating, by eating, by watching football, like what exactly am I saying? What message am I sending? And how does that relate to, you know, what I should be doing, you know, or what I believe, or what aligns with my values, you know what I mean? And I think we do need to take a second to really like sit down, all of us sit down and make sure that, you know, our actions are in alignment with our values and beliefs. And then I kind of want to like pose this question / make a statement at the same time. Like, we very quickly associate Black people with slavery. I think Latinos, you know, we have like that whole migrant worker like association that we make. We assume that they're immigrants, people with like brown skin. Native Americans, we assume, you know, that there's a history there. Those of us who do know it associate the Trail of Tears with Native Americans. But when we talk about white people, I think it's very important to point out that it seems like the thing that we associate with white people is just positivity, right? Out of all the shit that they've ever done, like Europeans, Euro-Americans, white people, it's really interesting that we find it so easy to overlook all of that. And I understand like a lot of things that contribute to that narrative. Of course, like if you're telling the story, of course you're gonna shine. But I mean, I think that's really interesting. And especially when we try to have like this balanced, equal conversation, like we're all the same and shit like that myth of equality. But like historically speaking, the folks who have the group of people who have consistently invaded and killed and pillaged and, you know, completely disrupted human ecological systems, consistently killed, destroyed, consistently taken, consistently stolen are people who belong to the group that we today identify as white people in America. And I think it's really time for us to find like more effective ways to get straight to that point, right? Because I really am tired of kind of like, hey, you know what privilege is? Like, you know how like skin colored Band-Aid and nude colored pantyhose, and you know that's privilege, right? And then like not getting to the root or the crux of the conversation, which is like, yo, this power structure is really right. It's impacting, you know, when, where, and if you live, right? And we're not having that conversation quickly enough or effectively enough. So that's kind of what all of this kind of represents to me, as well. It's like all this stuff has been happening for a long time. I think we're becoming a lot better at having that conversation. At least people of color are like getting just more impatient and tired of bullshit. But I mean, essentially, it's like that's what we need to be talking about. Why whiteface and blackface aren't the same thing, right? Why, you know, Kylie Jenner can wear braids and get praised for it, but there are policies at companies right now where black women and men have to decide whether or not they want to cut their hair or keep their job, right? I mean, I don't know, but that's kind of what's coming up for me right now.
I mean, a lot of times, like I hear, I remember speaking at this one event for an organization that I was in undergrad, and I forgot what, I think I was talking about professional dress or something. And I kind of tied in, you know, the notion of respectability politics and, you know, just talking about that. And there's this guy, he's in an organization, he had his mom and dad speak for what, I don't know. I think his dad is a preacher. And so he was talking about spirituality. But yeah. But anyway, he was like, basically, like I was saying, I understand that, you know, there are going to be things in place where you might have to dress a certain way or you might have to do all of these things. But ultimately, you should want to be your best self for yourself. Not necessarily because somebody expects you to be a certain type of way. So if you want to sag, if you want to wear suits, wear suits. Like if you want to wear J's, if you want to wear like whatever you want to do it because you want to do it, not because somebody else expects you to do it. Like they expect guys, black dudes, like, oh, you're wearing J's today. Like, yeah, because I like J's. You know what I'm saying? Like, but a lot of times we get caught up in being what somebody else wants us to be. And so he was like, I mean, but you know, like, it's the white man's world and you got to do this and you got to do that. And I was just like, okay, sir, one, this is my presentation. Shit, like, hush. That's number one. And number two, like, don't sit around and reinforce that same stuff. Like, when you say stuff like that to counteract what I'm saying, you are coming from a very, like, yes or no, sir. like mentality at this moment. And ultimately, what I'm trying to do in this moment is to say, well, yeah, right now, you might get on the job, and 9 times out of 10, your CEO is going to be a white man. Like, that's just, like almost a fact, right? But it's like, at the end of the day, you don't have to succumb, or you don't have to navigate the world in a way that is privileged in their view of you, right? And it's just like, there all of these things, like with allyship and all of that type of stuff. I think a lot of times the reason we don't have these tough conversations is because, one, a lot of people of color are even afraid to say white people out loud. That's number one. That's number one. They won't even say white people. And I'm like, they're white. What do you want? What? They're white. Like, I'm that person. Like, are you talking about white people? And they're like, and I'm like, it's not that's not a bad thing, right? So
Right.
One, they're afraid to do that, and they don't want to like step on toes or, do all of that. And I'm like, huh?
I don't want to make people uncomfortable.
And I'm like, but your life is uncomfortable.
Every day, inclusion, that for real, inclusion means that some of this discomfort that we've been feeling for a long time,
spread around.
Yeah, y'all need to come and join in on this too.
We're gonna spread it out a little bit. That's exactly what it means. And so when we have these conversations, a lot of times they're like, people of color are like, well, y'all don't protest, keep it out. I definitely remember in Charlotte, like when they were protesting, they were like, oh my God, y'all, please remain nonviolent. Like, this is not the way. This is not the way. In the Dallas, the shooting, this is not the way. Be nonviolent. Be nonviolent. I'm like, y'all do realize they throw Martin Luther King in y'all's face, don't you? Every time y'all do anything, they throw him in y'all's face. But he was in jail and shot with a water hose and shot in the throat and killed for being nonviolent.
Have you seen that meme with him? It's like he never fought back and he changed the world and he was peaceful and
he got shot in the throat.
Right. But that's the way it should read. But they're like, be more like him. But instead, they should be like, well, he did all that stuff and they still kill him. So imagine. Right.
But see, just as far as Dr. King is concerned, I think people really need to know that he carried a gun. Like,
he was radical. He was radical.
Like,
so I mean, this nonviolent. See, this is why, like, just reading, not even like formal education, but just like reading is so important, because there's a book that talks about this nonviolent stuff will get you killed, and that is the truth, because people try and act like we're the violent ones. When it's like, y'all are killing us. You've been killing us for centuries. And all of a sudden, people come together. Like in San Diego, people came together, did a memorial for a brother that was murdered by the police. And the police, they're shooting tear gas. They got helicopters. Like, all we're doing is being in community and being together, which is clearly threatening. So that's the violent piece, is the solidarity.
And in a country where they have framed all Black people as like monsters, like at any moment, no matter what you do, you are already always criminal, or always already criminal. Same thing. You're already a criminal in their eyes. Like, you don't have to do anything. They're going to assume that you're going to do it anyway. Like, they're going to assume that you're a threat. That's why a huge white man can run and tackle a police and still be alive, because he's not a threat. So ultimately, when you're talking about be nonviolent, if we see 10,000 Black people being nonviolent, y'all are just 10,000 monsters together.
Right.
So we have to subdue y'all and get y'all together from the beginning, because we don't know what you guys are going to do. But ultimately, like, y'all will preach nonviolence. And I saw somebody say something about the phrase, we are not our grandparents. And they were saying, are y'all thinking that, our ancestors were not radical or whatever. And I'm like, I don't necessarily think that's the thing. I think it's more so of, we're not gonna stand here, let you call us niggas, let you enslave us. Like a lot of white people, I feel like a lot of white people think like we're gonna revert back to slavery. That's exactly where this phrase comes from. Like, that's not gonna happen. Like, and I think that you know, by bringing that up, saying like, were they not radical? They were absolutely radical. But what we're saying is, we are not gonna stand there and be bowling pins while you continue to roll bowling balls at us. We're not gonna be target practice. Like, we gonna err on the side of the Black Panthers. Like, and I tell people all the time, the Black Panthers were so dangerous. Malcolm X was so dangerous. Who did they kill? Who?
Right.
They just said, if you shoot, we'll shoot. And white people couldn't take it. But they were non-violent. However, they just said, bruh, if you shoot at us, we gonna shoot at you. Where Martin Luther King was like, we ain't doing that at all. So he was obviously the easy one to go and be like, oh, Martin Luther King, like, let's cling to him. But ultimately, like, we're not our grandparents. Like, you're not about to talk to me. I'm not about to be yes, sir, no, sir, and you, and all of that. And if you try me, you're going to get these hands.
But see, that's the thing, too, is, oh, my bad, John.
You go ahead.
See, but that's the thing. Like, I think individually, if someone comes at either of any of us, right, crazy on campus or whatever, like, we'll be able to handle it, like, one-on-one. But systematically,
right,
it's just not working, because slavery still exists because of the 13th Amendment. We have people who look like us incarcerated for nonviolent crimes, filling up these private prisons and just completely doing menial work that's considered slavery because they're incarcerated, right? So we know that slavery still exists. We know that terrorism is not something that they do over there, right? That is something that's homegrown and as American as apple pie and baseball. So colonizing spaces, saying to people, it's your land now what? And telling people you need to work for me just because I said so. That is terrorism, right? And it also is the root of white men who shoot up schools, who shoot up movie theaters, right? Who have the privilege of being alive, right? So even just the idea of that, right? If, like you said, Kenny, if we're deemed a threat, automatically we don't even get the privilege of breathing, right, anymore. So I think that's just something really important to kind of think about. What is terrorism? How is it defined? And why isn't this a week of mourning as opposed to a week of Thanksgiving, right? Who are we thanking? Why are we thanking pilgrims? Like, they enslaved my ancestors, so like, I'm good, you know?
Yeah.
Pass the mac and cheese.
I definitely think part of King's strategy that we don't get when we focused on the whitewashed version of King is to highlight just how terroristic America has been. And he knew, and all of them knew, all of the people who were part of the civil rights movement in the Deep South knew that nonviolence would lead to violence. They knew that they would be attacked. They knew that they would receive threats. They were receiving it as they were strategizing. And at some point, part of the strategy was, hey, let's get this shit on film. Let's let the world see just how terrible the United States and white people specifically in the United States can be. And that is part of what pushed a lot of legislation. But we don't get that narrative. We don't get that part of the conversation. And instead it's reduced to, like our grandparents, right? They were docile. They were yes or no, sir. And Kenny, that was an interesting take. And I see that. But when I first saw that, I think like the underlying theme that I took from that was like, I'll hit you back when my grandparent did. You know what I mean? I'll swing on you, or I'll like be belligerent at times where my grandparent may have been more patient or more like reserved, which the stakes are totally different. And it took a lot more restraint. I think that the stakes are different. Straight up. I think that the stakes are different. And if I thought that by swinging back, I might lose my life, I might think twice about it. And if I thought that just by looking directly in the eyes, looking a white person directly in the eyes, I could lose my life, I might, react a little differently. So I think that a lot of like that shirt around, there's a lot of context that's missing from it.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I think that we do have a better understanding that, like, for a lot of these folks, no matter what we do, we're still black, right? We, like you said, Lisa, we don't have that privilege of breathing sometimes. That's why we can't get away with the same things that someone who is white can get away with. Recognize that, even if only on a subconscious level, right? So yeah, maybe I do need to, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like with the statements like we're not our grandparents, I think it's more of a warning scent for white people,
Right,
to say that you hear stories that your dad or your grandfather or your great grandfather tell you about how niggers were or how niggers should be or whatever. And I think it's more so for them to say, don't think that shit is gonna happen if you try and hem me up in a corner, or you try and call me out in front of some people. Like, there's a video of a little black girl in a white man's class, and she snapped. She completely snapped. And he was like, do you have to yell? She was like, yeah, because I'm mad. I do. I have to yell because you don't get it, right? And so we're still dealing with some of those baby boomers who are still very much, stuck in their ways, who have children. And they're now our colleagues. And that's not to say that their grandchildren necessarily agree, but at the same time, we have to let y'all know that our leaders these days aren't necessarily telling us to be nonviolent. And if you think about the ones that are, like, dare I say, Al Sharpton. I ain't really heard much from him lately.
Those for a while. I ain't heard from Al.
You know what? We can't do that. Not today. Not on this one.
Okay. So
we got another. That's a separate one.
But I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, the idea of optics has not changed. Mm-hmm. That is why things are so quickly on Facebook Live. That is why things are so quickly on Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat, because we still are dealing with the same things. However, I believe where we're getting to a point now is we might be doing something back to you this time. Like, and I think that if white people stop for a second and say, there's Granddaddy talked about how, he went over there and pushed that old black lady and she ain't do nothing back. However, if I go over there and push John might do something back to me. Even if we just have those pause moments where they stop and say, this is potentially dangerous for me. Because if I put my hands on another human being, they're going to put their hands back on me. If all of these things had a pause moment, I believe that a lot of things would get a lot better. And so I do believe that we want these things to be as nonviolent as possible, because we don't want any more lives killed. I don't want white people to get killed. I don't want black people to I don't want nobody to be getting killed, because I think that ultimately it's unnecessary. If you could just stop and think about what you're doing. But the threat back in the day for there being a revolt or a rebuttal against a cop in Birmingham, that is a completely different threat these days. Like 9 times out of we saw those videos and we saw black people retreat and all of that type of stuff. But I think that Dallas showed hold on. Like, and then white people were like, hold on, wait, we don't need to do this. This is not the way. We don't need to be violent. And we're like, let's just pick any city in America, and let's just say that there was at least one racially motivated crime here. One person that died in this place. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like Birmingham and Montgomery got enough deaths for all the cities. Like, you know what I'm saying? Rosewood got enough deaths for all of the cities. Tulsa, Durham, all of these places, right? But if there are more of those pause moments, and I think if we could get them to pause and say, hold on, let me think about what I'm going to do before I do this, then I think that is where dialogue can be inserted. But I feel like we're inserting dialogue into gunfire that's headed toward us, and obviously that is getting lost in the sauce. Like, and so, I mean, I don't necessarily think that violence is always the way. And so that message sometimes can get very convoluted and twisted into other things. But I also think that it's kind of like, it's like a warning scent. Like, we're a very brightly colored frog right now. And you know that very brightly colored frogs are 9 times out of 10 poisonous. Like, that's your warning sign. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I
kind of take it as like, we are not our grandparents. It's like, we are not going to make you feel comfortable. We are not going to allow you to mistreat us individually, right? Individually. Mm-hmm. And we're going to work on this systemic piece, which I think is where we're kind of at now. I'm just at the point where I'm like over these conversations. I mean, we talked about the safety pin and like all of what that symbol is supposed to mean. Right? Like, just like we could talk about the American flag and the symbol that's supposed to mean. But folks talking about allyship and all this stuff. And I think that we need to have more of a conversation around what does it mean to move from being an ally into being an accomplice, right? Like, how do you make a transition into like my life and my work and my being is committed to the lives of people who I may not look like, right? That's the shift that I think would be helpful, because I'm not interested in talking about Band-Aids and what color they are, right? Like, I'm interested in having a conversation on why on my way to class, me and my students can be walking to the same class, but I'm getting stopped. And I teach the class on this campus, right? At a Research One university. Like, why? So those are the conversations that we need to have. And then even just thinking about Iowa in particular, like, we have less than 2% of the undergraduate student population that are Black males. But you got this basketball and football team that make up over 50% of Black males. So like, where are the systematic priorities? So forget these safety pins, it's systematic priorities of Black lives, right? So you don't have to wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, but if you are telling me that Black males make up X% of the football team and the basketball team, and the retention rate is low and the graduation rate is low, then your investment is in their bodies and not their minds, right? And then we're no different from our ancestors who were enslaved. So even just thinking about all of what that means, we have to really analyze and contextualize, like you're saying, what some of these memes mean and what they can mean and how we can use them as teaching tools with our students.
I think that kind of as we wrap up, I especially took from that with the safety pin piece. I'm assuming that if you are qualified to help create a safe space for me or another member of a marginalized group, that you've had experience having these conversations and you understand the patterns of systemic oppression and how they might shape someone's life and our interactions, right? So I would also assume that if you're wearing those safety pins, if you're supposed to be qualified to have those conversations and help me feel safe, then you're prepared to talk about the systemic stuff too, right? And challenge that stuff. Of course, that's not the case, right? Which is my point too. Like, you shouldn't be wearing those pins unless you've had like experience, right? You shouldn't be wearing those pins in the first place. And I think that moving from an ally, right? That's cool. Like, you know, you want to make me feel all right? The best way to do that is to move from allyship to become an advocate or an agent of change or an accomplice, as you said, Lisa. And I think those are the conversations that we're not having nearly enough of. And I feel like Malcolm X, or should I say Denzel Washington, when that young white lady approached him in the movie, and he was like, "Yo, go help your people, go get your people right." You know what I mean? And that's kind of where we are now. Like, if you really are an ally, I think there are conversations that you need to be focused on having with people who experience life the way that you have, and who have the same patterns of behavior that you've had, right? And I think that you need to be prepared to have those conversations, because, truth be told, white people generally suck on topics about race anyway. So there's like, I'm not really looking at most white people and be like, let me bare my soul to you about all the racial oppression I've ever experienced. That's not a thing for me. And I don't think that's the case for most Black people. But yeah, I think if we can shift more towards that, and being honest with people, like the young girl who was like, yes, I'm mad. That's why I'm loud, because I'm pissed, right? Let me be pissed and hear what I'm saying. I think if we can have more of those conversations and more people can say white without whispering, I think like we'll be all right. And Kenny, bro, I was out at dinner at lunch with my grandma not too long ago. She's like my church mother, my adopted grandma. But we were talking, and she was like, blah, 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 President Obama, blah, 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 blah. And so, I mean, it's like anything race. Anything that is a race, people are afraid to comment on because they are afraid of being seen as racist. To the point where we know that President Obama is Black, and there are people out there whispering his name. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Well, yeah, man. Chloe, any closing thoughts as we wrap up?
You said something earlier about, I think it was the lady on your status or something, talking about how we can educate white people. I read I don't know if it was a Very Smart Brothers article or if it was a Huffington Post article, but Black people do not have to educate you about any of this stuff. If you want to, and I think you kind of talked about this on your status in your long diatribe to her. I think it was around 0.7. But like, anything you want to know about race, anything you want to know about classism, anything you want to know about slavery and its effects, anything you want to know, you can find it. And I think that all of these people who want to wear safety pins need to go to safety pin school, and they need to go through a rigorous, like, 3 or 4 year program. And then when you graduate, then you can wear a safety pin. And I think you alluded to this fact that you cannot possibly be an ally if you like don't even know like the baseline problems of what's going on, right? You don't know what to point out. You don't know what's a microaggression. You don't know what people even got going on because you're not even well read enough or experienced enough in having these conversations. What points are you going to pull out if you never talk about race? You first got to have some conversations about race with some people who are affected by race and understand their side. And that's what the girl was saying in the video. She was like, you ain't even open-minded enough to hear what I got to say. And the white teacher was like, the white educator was like, You don't tell me that I'm not open-minded. Sir, what are you talking about? Like, but you see what I'm saying? Like, you can't possibly be an ally if you don't even want to have conversations about race. You cannot be an ally if you don't want to have conversations about gender, sexuality, religion, ableism. You don't want to be an ally for all these marginalized people, because these are hard conversations that you have to have, and ones that are quite frankly going to smack you in the face with your own privilege. You cannot possibly. So they need to go to school, and they need to go to safety pin school. And I think safety pin school is there's not gonna be a building, but ultimately safety pin school is gonna have to take place on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and in Starbucks and all of these places. People need to go to safety pin school. They need to be called out so that they can understand what exactly it is that you are doing that is wrong in this situation, so that you can be a better advocate or ally or accomplice to people that you claim to want to make safe. Hell, I do not feel safe around a person with a safety pin who don't even want to talk about black versus white issues in America. You do not make me safe. There's no way in hell you are going to make me safe. Like, and so, yeah, the conversations have to happen. Like, but I'm not about to. When you go and if you research and you have a question, you can come and ask me. But I'm not gonna pull you to the side and try and explain all of the stuff that was wrong with the African diaspora. It's just not gonna happen. So, white people, we do not have to educate you. If you really wanted to learn so that you can be an ally, you can find whatever information you need to find, because it's tiring. We have other things to worry about, like who made the potato salad, and that's just it. That's all I have to say.
Is it big chunks? Is it like big chunks or is it little?
Yeah, like, ma'am, you got way too much relish in the potato salad.
Is it white or yellow? I know who made it.
I mean, we gotta put a little bit of mayonnaise. I mean, a little mustard in it. Did you sprinkle paprika on the top? Like what all happened? Why are the chunks of egg so big in the dressing?
I cannot with you.
Why did you make the dressing out of sweet cornbread? Why didn't you have a pot of giblet gravy for the dressing? We have questions. Why is the sweet potato pie so light? Why? What's going on?
You got a problem with light skinned sweet potato?
Yeah, I don't trust light skinned sweet potato pie.
Why does sweet potato pie smell like pumpkin spice latte?
Hello, this is pumpkin. This ain't sweet potato. Pumpkins are out of season. They've been out of season for a whole month now. We don't have time to be educating white people on how you can help me feel safe. We got things to worry about that are gonna affect our Thanksgiving. I like that. Thanksgiving.
We have
our Thanksgiving meal.
More pressing issues at hand. Thanksgiving. Appreciate that, Lisa.
I can't take credit for that at all. My indigenous brothers and sisters, introduced me to that one.
Not white, right? You gave credit where credit is due.
Gotta cite the source. Just can't be stealing stuff and saying it's yours. Like,
like your name's Columbus. Absolutely.
I mean, Columbusing, right? But I mean, I agree with Kenny. I mean, we've talked about this before, and I just don't find these conversations with non-people of color to be our responsibility at all. And even just in thinking about, like, oh, if you have a question, then you can come talk to me. No, you cannot. You can. What you can do is email PDI and have us come to your university, do a training for your staff.
Yo,
that's what you could do, because that is systematic change. We all know our stuff, right? Like, these are the steps I'm talking about, because y'all want to have safety pins, but you don't want to have real conversations on why the football team makes up most of the Black students at your school, right? Like, those are the conversations that we need to have. I mean, I have a class on my campus that I go to, right, that I'm a student in. And I, you know, at the beginning of the semester, I was like, good morning. And people would look at me like, what do we do with that? I don't know what that means. And I was like, oh, where I'm from, when, you know, you go into a room or when you look at someone, you greet them. So instead of wasting my energy on my good morning energy on these people, I stopped, right? I just stopped completely. So one of the challenges, though, is that in this same class, this dude that sits across from me is wearing a safety pin on his sleeve, right? I'm the only Black student in the class, and y'all want to wear safety pins, but you can't even say hi? Like, no, I'm not here for that. I am not here for that. What'd you say?
That's that shit I don't like.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. These people that want to wear, like, oh, well, I study Black people, or I study LGBT folks, or I study fill in the blank, marginalized group, and I'm white. So I feel like I'm a safe person for you to come to. Nah, because you can't even give me a good morning. Like, no. Why? I can't trust you with a good morning. How am I trust you with my soul and spirit and being and experience of my ancestors? Whatever. I'm not here for that. So that's why I'm just not interested in this whole safety pin movement. We didn't even get to talk about the election as much as we thought we were going to, but I know that I'm down to do a safety pin school training for these people, because we need to, because they're wearing it like they doing something. Y'all really think you're doing something? Oh, okay. You're wearing a safety pin saying I stand with you, and that's cute and everything. But how are you not going to stand up for curriculum? How are you not going to acknowledge who's on the basketball team, who's on the football team? Like, how are you not going to notice that we don't have a Black collections in the library? Like, whatever, we can fill in the blank for whatever. And we can do an assessment for specific schools. But I mean, this idea that we can wear safety pins so that people can feel safe I was gonna say it's funny, but it's actually very dangerous to think that this could actually, produce something productive. So.
You're muted.
Right. Are you talking?
Yeah, he was talking too.
Was he? Because
I was saying that we might do a part 2 to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about a little bit. See if you can holler at Gucci to take a portion of the proceeds from the safety pins and let that go towards your tuition to safety pin school. PDI, we out here doing this thing. Man, if y'all enjoy what you're seeing, please like, comment, share, and please keep the suggestions and recommendations coming. And yeah, I'm John.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm Kenny.
Thanks for tuning in. So we'll see you next time. Until then, be great and keep it interesting. Peace.